All right, we've just had the weigh-in for Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. Let's talk about the weights. Let's talk about the face-off. It wasn't anything really to majorly write home about with the face-off, but let's just do a quick video and we talk about this. We give my 2 cents on it. I don't want to say this is maybe my final thoughts. I might do that in a separate video, but let's have a little discussion and talk about it. So, the weigh-in went as follows. Daniel Dubois, 248.4 pounds. Anthony Joshua, 253 pounds. Excuse me. If you look at the weights, 1 ounce lighter than he was against Francis Ngannou. Now, you got to bear in mind Joshua did have his jeans on. Or not his jeans, his tracksuit bottoms on. Maybe you can knock a little bit of weight off for that. But the consistency with Joshua's weight over the last couple of years, really over the last year, has been very good. Because when you look at the weights, now, you look at the weights he was weighing in kind of, say, 6-7 years ago, like against Klitschko 250, Takam 254. I felt that those weights, he was pumping a lot of weights. Now, obviously, he still is, but he looked more, Joshua looks a little bit more, how do I even describe it? I don't want to say natural because there's a lot of weightlifting there, but he doesn't have the same look in his physique as he did back then. And back then, he was looking sluggish. He was looking way too heavy. It just didn't look right. He eventually learned from that and he got himself back into the 240s. You know, you see when he fought Parker, 242, Povetkin, 246, Ruiz, 247, 238 or 237 for Ruiz in the rematch, which was very impressive that he was able to get down that low. And he stuck around the 240s up until this most recent comeback. When he weighed in against Jermaine Franklin, he was 255. Now, I didn't think he looked good in that fight, personally. And I was kind of like, ooh, that's too heavy a weight. The 240s is good. 255, I don't know. 250 against Robert Helenius, 251 against Otto Wallin, 252 against Francis Ngannou, and 252 again against Daniel Dubois. So he's been consistent. I mean, we're not seeing Tyson Fury weight fluctuations. We're not seeing that. And maybe now, at this point in his career, because you got to bear in mind, against Klitschko, he was in, his mid-20s. He's now in his mid to late 20s. Now he's in his mid-30s. Maybe his body is just naturally going to be kind of weighing this now. You know, maybe in the high 240s, low 250s. Maybe that's just the weight his body at this time in his career feels comfy at. Whereas back when he was younger, it was a little bit too heavy. Alexander Usyk is someone who, his weight very seldom fluctuates much over 220. 222, thereabouts. Whereas someone like a Tyson Fury, when you look at his weigh-ins, they're like that. They're all over the place. He's weighing in at 262, then 272, then 278, then 268, and you're kind of like, what the hell is going on here? So consistency is the key, and I like that with Anthony Joshua. As for Daniel Dubois, the weigh-in 248, I think that that's a decent enough weight for him. He's a little bit heavier than he was against Filip Hrgovic, who was 245. He was 249 against Jarrell Miller. Against Alexander Usyk, he was even lighter than that, 233. So Daniel Dubois, the weight is coming up. Now, if you look throughout the course of his career, early on in his career, he was very seldom weighing any more than 239. Ebenezer Tete in 2019, he was 240, he was 240 again against Fujimoto, against Ricardo Snyder, I think they say his name, 244. That was during the lockdown. A lot of fighters were coming a little bit heavy, 244 against Joe Joyce. Then he came down against Bogdaninu, 240, 238 against Joe Casamorna, I think they say his name. Against Brian, 240, and against Lorena, 240 again. So, came down in weight and has now been gradually putting the weight on. At this stage in his career, he's 26 years old. I would imagine maybe 248 is not necessarily the worst weight because he is a man who's growing. At early in his career, in his teens and early 20s, he was in the 230s. Now we're seeing Dubois creeping into the 240s. 248 is 3 pounds heavier than he was against Filip Hrgovic. 3 pounds is not a massive amount to really look. If he was coming in 10 pounds heavier, you might look and say, oh, Jesus, that's a bit of a head scratcher. But 3 pounds is not a crazy amount, to be fair. It's really not. So against Hrgovic at 245, maybe Daniel Dubois is looking and thinking, I came in heavier than normal, not a crazy amount heavier, but I came in heavier than normal against Filip Hrgovic. I was able to absorb his shots. I was able to take them quite well. Maybe his logic is, if I'm a little bit heavier, if I'm in around this weight, in the 240s to maybe the low in the 245s to kind of the low 250s, Maybe I'll be able to retain my strength, which you seem to do. Punch and power seems to retain that. And I can retain my toughness, my durability in that regard. Maybe that's what he's thinking. And maybe, as well as that, he was worried about being outmanned in there against Anthony Joshua, because a lot of us have been speculating that Joshua is going to be the physically stronger of the two. And I still think he will, in spite of the fact the weight difference is only 4 pounds. I think he will still be the stronger of the two. But maybe Daniel Dubois doesn't want it to be, he wants to offset it a little bit. He doesn't want it to be a gaping, he is pushing me back like man against boy. He just wants to be able to give as good as he gets in the clinch. Maybe that's the reasons. In terms of the face-off, Joshua against Usyk made a point to try and be the one who turns away last, and he didn't. Well, I think Alexander Usyk plays that game well. I don't think he gives a damn whether he turns away first or he doesn't, but he makes a point, a bit like what Tyson Fury used to do with Vladimir Klitschko, by saying, you left the sauna before I did. I think for him, it's making a point. You want me to turn away first? Well, I won't. With Joshua, he was determined that Usyk, you turn away first. He didn't. With this one, they were talking on the commentary feed about, Frank's going to have to interject. He didn't need to. It was a run-of-the-mill face-off. At the end of the day, I don't think Dubois or Joshua, certainly at this point in Joshua's career, I don't think they take too much in a face-off. I think if this was Joshua determined, I am going to outface you, then maybe you could say, oh God, he's gone back to the Usyk days. But he didn't. So, in terms of weigh-ins, it was what it was. I love the setting in Trafalgar Square. I've been there many, many times. I know Trafalgar Square quite well. Lovely place, and what a setting. Joshua's weigh-ins in the UK are always great. He's done them in Westfield Shopping Centre. I think he's even done press conferences in Westfield Shopping Centre over at Shepherd's Bush. He's done this weigh-in Trafalgar Square. I love the fact that he's doing it in places that are accessible to everybody. I was actually at one of his weigh-ins in Westfield Shopping Centre, and it was lovely to see people who you could tell they were only there, just doing their weekly shop. And it's like, oh wow, look, Anthony Joshua's here. I love the way that those weigh-ins, they can get the fans involved. I like going to a weigh-in. I don't go to them as much as I would a press conference. If it was media only, I'd go to a weigh-in. But I tend to go to the press conference because that's exclusive media only for the most part. But going to a weigh-in where you have that kind of fan interaction with it, I like it. I do like it. So that's my thoughts. I will give my final thoughts on this probably tomorrow morning, but for now, I will leave it there. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Give me an old subscribe. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. It is free. And lastly, peace.